the feds, they're not independent. They're basically controlled by the U.S. government. They're basically controlled by, I'll extend it to even say, they basically are controlled by the Eurocentric establishment. Right?
Well, when I say that the Fed is not, when I say it's not a part of the government, I'm going through the lens of it's not democratic.
Right.
Meaning that we're not appointing who's in those positions.
Not directly.
But we're not.
But
we appoint those that select.
The president can, can't they remove the...
Yeah, the chairman of the Fed, but also who are those boardmen of the Fed, kind of have a free reign and sit in those posts for, 10 years. And when I say free reign, meaning that it's not in the same vein of like right now on the crux of what I feel like is happening in an international or a national crisis of what's happening with the way cash flow is in America right now. Yeah. Someone will be held way more accountable, as we saw in 2008, if these were people we had to vote for. But they're once removed. So we blame George W. Bush or Barack Obama for what Ben Bernanke or here's the classic one, too big to fail. And, they got us in the problem. We got you in this problem, so we're the best people to get you out of this problem. Yeah. That's not the type of shit that a politician can say. That's not even something that, you know what I'm saying, you can stand on. But like a Ben Bernanke or a Alan Greenspan can say something like that because they know, in reality, at best, I'm dealing with, I would say that, Jamie Dimon has more control and influence of the Fed than Joe Biden does.
Right.
And that's why I say it's not us, because the corporations that run these banks and the purse strings of how the money is released to these banks. So, man, I didn't think I'd go on this economic soliloquy, but basically a bank makes money in the same concept of loan sharking. A bank makes money off of loaning money, and then they gather that money through the interest rates. Yeah. That's the on paper version of what a bank can do.
We're talking about loan shark. The term would be the VIG. You make money off of. Yeah, that's it. That's exactly right.
So to have a bank in America, you technically, hence the FDIC and what happened with the original crash, if we know the stock market crash. Well, my other grandmother said, shit, I don't remember the Great Depression because we was already poor. Right. But at that point in time, it's like the FDIC will insure up to $200,000 into this transaction. But to insure that money and that $200,000, you have to have a relationship and be established as a bank within this system to lend money and all of this. Cryptocurrency supersedes all of that.
Right.
It's Jamie Dimon does not have any more access to blockchain than you do.
Yeah.
If you decide to buy right now. So even if Chase goes in and says, we want to buy $400 million worth of cryptocurrency, and you decide to buy $1 worth of cryptocurrency, it's the same influence. Whereas we already know that if Chase Bank wants to do something, I'm sure that the Fed will allow for Chase or Bank of America or any of these banks around here that have ties to colonialism. Let's be clear about that. Ties to colonialism. They have more access to this. And that's why I say the Fed is operating outside of the government accountability system of the lens of democracy. But, here we go.
Good point. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm with you. So, yeah, if you think about fiat currency right now.
Yeah.
Fiat currency has no intrinsic value. The only value that fiat currency has is whatever value the perceptions of folk think it has. And most perceptions of people that trust fiat currency, and when we take fiat, we're talking about the dollar bill,
yes,
peso and all that, but we'll say the dollar bill. That perception is basically propped up by government willing to step in and prop up that currency when it's hurting. And one of the reasons it hurts is because you basically have a centralized monetary system with these third parties, these middlemen that that try and control the flow and the value of that dollar. And what we're beginning to see is they're effing lousy at it.
And at one point in time, as many people say, because I'm sure it's people saying like, that's why you just be. So at one point in time, it was the gold standard. $1 you could trade in for a certain amount of gold. But now I would go as far as to say that the value of $1 is kind of based upon the debt that you can incur. Hence, the value of cash itself, when we talk about capitalism, is the liquidity of it. Meaning that I can have this dollar bill, and that dollar bill can now be transferred into X amount of value. And this what shows the instability right now of $1 because prices, hence the inflation of it. Prices are so all over the place. If a person says that t-shirt costs $600, somebody may say, oh man, it's beyond too much expensive. And another person may say, all right, I guess that's a $600 shirt. Whereas, if you had the gold standard and you could still quantify things, but even gold's value at one point in time was the liquidity of it, because if gold no longer has liquid value, it's the same thing. If the old adage or the scenario I always give is if all power goes out, and nothing is happening and a person's walking down the street with 7 gallons of water and I have $3,000 worth of money in cash in my hand, how valuable are those 7 gallons of water?
Right.
To me, it's $3,000 worth value because at this point in time with I don't know what's happening in the world, that water has now re-quantified the value. But if a person still holds the value of the cash, now you're walking up to the guy with the 7 gallons of water like, I'll give you $20 for it, $40 for it, and you're negotiating. But it's still the perceived, agreed upon value.
That's right. Yeah, that you nailed it right there. Perceived, agreed upon value. And I like your point that what makes the dollar still a dominant currency, although it's waning, is its liquidity.
And then also in international markets. So, and rest in peace to Muammar Gaddafi. And I believe that this is what led to his assassination is the fact that he was looking to not just, and then even the quality of life of Libyans. Most people don't know this. If you were a Libyan, you were given the right to housing, education, healthcare, many things. Libya had a very stable society through what was happening with a lot of the oil trade, and we know the greed connected to that. But he was going beyond what Libya was, and he was looking to create the Afro, which would have been an African dollar to trade amongst, I want to say, a lot of Northern Africa and some of Central Africa, maybe some West Africa. That would have transitioned because if you go into most of these other countries, the standard of how they use currency and liquidity is based on the American dollar. And as more countries wane and move away from that, that also lowers the American dollar because now I can no longer go to Panama or Nigeria or Britain or Germany or whatever and have $100 and say, give me some of this. It'd be like a person from Senegal coming here with a Senegalese $1 million and it's like, hey, let me get that shirt. You'd be like, can't do nothing for you, man.
And unlike Gaddafi and what Western powers did to Gaddafi, they can't bomb the blockchain.
No.
And if there was a way for them to, they would. So since they can't physically bomb the blockchain, what the Jamie Dimons and the Buffetts of the world are doing is they try to dog it every chance they can.
Yep.
You will never hear Jamie Dimon or William Buffett or any of those folks say anything good about the blockchain or Bitcoin or smart contracts because it's scaring them to death. And it should, because that's one of the components. And it's so interesting that how this evolution has led to all of these things now that we see as progress are actually things on the long run that are going to hurt Western powers, because decentralized monetary systems means that guy is, when things are in place, the guy that's over there that's a Somalian pirate, if he has access and knows how to use the blockchain, he can trade currency with the person that's in Argentina that's doing things, skipping all around the centralized monetary system. That scares the hell out of people. You talked about it from a macro level and how it affects countries, how a centralized system impedes and restricts that flow. It also impedes and restricts individuals. That's what's powerful about what we're going to talk about here, because that same bank, and you probably pointed this out, can decide that no, this particular debit card transaction is not going to go through.
Yeah, we flag this.
Right.
And we may, and you've probably dealt with that. We've all probably dealt with that. If we blackened the trade. I mean, our ATM machine, as I told one of those people at Chase, my ATM machine goes off at 6 o'clock. So God forbid if I want to get cash after 6 o'clock. So are there certain barriers like that? It's been many times you put a check in for, I don't know, it was a recent transaction at just $700. And I'm like, that's not even that much. But they held that transaction for 10 business days.
Yeah.
And I know that things like that are systemic racism.
Yeah. And because of the central control. That doesn't happen here. And not only does it happen here, what we're about to talk about, what's fascinating about NFTs is it's a way to actually do what the dollar has done by taking something that's an intangible that in and of itself has no value, but you actually build the value of that intangible based on the perceptions of the people that are participating in the transactions and support of that intangible. That intangible now being an NFT. The NFT could be a picture of a dog bone. And you decide to upload that picture of a dog bone to a decentralized storage system that is connected to or interconnected to a blockchain. That would be the example of what they call the OpenSea marketplace and other marketplaces like that. That's where they've got marketplaces like this. The classic LeBron James and the NBA is tapped into NFTs.
Big time.
Well, those NFTs, by way of a token, are connected to the blockchain where the ownership of, and all it is again, perceptions of people saying, oh, the person that owns this particular dunk by LeBron James is this person here based on the fact that this dunk is associated with this token connected to the public key of this guy named Joe Blow. Right? And so Joe Blow owns this dunk. Now, can somebody else say, well, man, I can see the same thing on YouTube? It's still about perceptions. That's the equivalent of when you brought up the idea with the horrible art. It's like, this art over here, this art is just a white canvas with a black dot on it. You say, well, wait a minute. That looks like that spot that's on my bathroom wall. Well, yeah, but that ain't not recognized.
Or here's the classic one. You and I have both seen the Mona Lisa, and we have never been to the Louvre. And we're smart enough to recognize that if we own the Mona Lisa, it would be worth what art collectors say is millions of dollars or God knows what. But we can still see the picture of it. But the Louvre has the possession of the actual quote-unquote art.
That's right. So what we're talking about here is basically using the construct of NFTs to literally create value in our community. That's really what excites me about the potential here. Is to literally be able to say, and I love the concept and I'm glad we stuck with it, the concept that you said, hey, no, let's just have one NFT, but have multiple ownerships of that. Because the multiple ownerships ensures that you have community buy-in. And that community buy-in is our opportunity to educate young people, old people. We're going to do the same thing with NFTs and blockchain, training people on how to set up their own public key and private key. Same similar process that we went through with, I don't know, you recall Detroit drums. When drums came out, when that whole social, this was before Facebook. That whole social networking effort was with Theo Broughton and them, where we had training sessions up there on Livernois and
Livernois and like Linden. It was
where the Happy Pizza places. I think it's still Happy Pizzas there. But before it was Happy Pizza, that was a little area where people, if they wanted to work on computers that they didn't have in the home, they could go there. We had training sessions on how to use drums, and so a whole a whole population of Detroiters begin to learn how to use a computer so they could access drums.
So drums. So for people that let's say that drums was a message board that was started and founded through my dad. Now this was I would say maybe about 20 years ago, and this drums grew to a point where I definitely think it led to the Fire Jerry Oliver movement. It definitely led to the probably Freeman Hendricks not being elected mayor movement. I
think it discouraged Archer from running for mayor. He only ran for mayor one term, primarily because of the information going through drums was not going through mainstream media, and people began to just focus on drums after a while. It was DetroitDrums.com.
Detroit Drums was it was a message board. So if you're familiar with the message board, you make a post and people can comment on that post. But it had
you could add photos.
Yep.
You could do all this stuff. Yeah, man.
Yeah, and it had some what do you call that? Like some admin. Because anything on the internet.
Oh, yeah.
But this was like pre-spamming to
That's
today.
right. This was pre-Facebook.
Yeah.
Now I know we've been talking about. You want to stop?
No, continue.
So by training our folks, by teaching them how to get their own public key and private key, and then teaching them how to purchase some Ether. Right, and you can get Ether. I mean, minimum $5. Ethereum. Yeah. Well, Ethereum is the actual platform.
Yep. And Ether is
the equivalent of the Bitcoin. They call it Ether. And then there's something called gas, and it's all based on But by doing that, it enables them to then say, what if we have a smart contract that a token is connected to, and that token is connected to, and I use the term totem because I thought about this. If we come up with a colorful, when you come up with whatever that totem, whatever that visual is going to be, and that's all it really is. It's the shiny object that people look to and connect to, much like our ancestors would connect to a totem if we were in a village in Africa. That totem becomes a centerpiece of the connectivity of the village. That's why when people would come in and take over, when other villages, other warriors would come in and take over an African village, or if Europeans came in, they say one of the ways we can get control of the hearts and minds of these folks is if we can get this totem. If we get that totem, then we're the king, right? We're talking about establishing a totem. You can't just go in and grab that totem because, of course, the totem is replicated. All that's because of the blockchain, right? If we have a way where people can buy, we'll call it 1 share or 2 shares, let's say $3 to $2 or $5 a pop, let's say, and what they're really buying into is the ability to determine the disposition or destination of that totem, of that visual, of that whatever that's going to be. And I always think of something, visual, something beautiful they can look at. They can go out and see that visual on the OpenSea platform and see the token associated with it and know that through the smart contract, that token is associated with all these shares that all these folks have. And in order to participate in that, I was saying you could have it, and these are just my speculation. We could talk, and you could talk to other folks to see how they want to do it. But for a person to be listed as a member, a family member, or a shareholder of that token, they'd have to be voted in. And maybe there's criteria that folks will come up with. You got to be a Detroiter. You got to be someone that's local. But basically, you got to be voted in by a consensus of the people that are already in that as shareholders connected to that one public key associated with that token.
Now, let me expand on how this values for not just Detroit is different, but this is going to be a gateway as we work this out. And I'm sure many of my other cohorts in community organizing will want this because it now re-quantifies our social capital. So now when Rocket Mortgage wants to expand what happens with the Q line, and they want to gather some social capital, it'd be like, wow, it'd be great to get into this Linwood and Davison token over NFT over here. How do we get that? And it's like, well, you're gonna have to get voted in through that collection of those community members. You know,
Yeah, and now we voted in.
And now it's up to the value that we quantify. So it could be dollars. It could be, all right, you're going to put a rec center over here in the neighborhood. It could be whatever, rent it into the smart contract through Ethereum, and the transaction would not be completed until our demands are met in the community. So it quantifies that social capital just by honoring who we are. Mm-hmm. And now it can put value points on whatever we want with that.
Right. And what happens is once brothers and sisters begin to see how that works, where they say, you know, and I use this example, and because, you know, I'm using Sister Queen Mother Watson as an example. That's why I have down here the House of Watson family.
Yep.
So the House of Watson family,
and they're gonna be looking now as you're talking. They'll be looking at this, you know.
Oh yeah, because we don't have. I don't think you have a visual for it, you know.
Well, we have it on paper, but it'll be up on the screen when.
Okay.
Let's see.
Yeah, cool. It'll be up on the screen.
Yep.
So you have so the House of Watson family, and we're not just talking about just members of Watson. We're talking about people that the collective shareholders decide to vote into that those shareholders. And when they say these are the shareholders that actually control the release of that NFT to anybody, right? And there may be certain circumstances where an NFT, based on whatever the collective decides is a consensus, because a consensus could be listed as 85%, right? A consensus might be 90%. If you don't get a 90% consensus, then whatever Rock Financial wants to do or whatever, it's just not going to happen because you didn't get a consensus. Some might say, and they may say, well, depending upon the purpose of this collective, they may have it as low as majority rule. Yeah. But some tokens, some totems may be sacred. This is one we never want to touch. So you've got to have it at, say it's a 85% consensus for everybody to agree to sell this totem, or 90% consensus, and it stays 90%. And all this we can control in a smart contract. Yeah. And it only drops down to something less than that every 5 years. And then there's only for a small window of time. And when that vote can take place, then it bounces back up to 95%. Now, that said, one of the restrictions of a smart contract, once we put that code in place, we can't change it. And that's also kind of through the blockchain. It's locked in. You can't manipulate it. It can't be broken even if the FBI and the CIA step in and say, change this. It'd be like, right. Can't change it. Let me talk to you about Detroit is Different, the community group. The community group is the project effort where we're going to be doing the Alaa Studio project for outdoor podcasting, the gardening, and the performance. Make sure you give like everybody else that's given so far to this great campaign. We got $885. I want to get to $2,500. I got faith we'll get there with your support so we can stay creative, keep this thing in the summer, keep this thing outside, and keep this thing going. Detroit is different.